Hello and welcome to the CSN 3M Mindset Monday podcast. I'm Andrew Wade with Case-Specific Nutrition. On this channel, we focus on the 3 M's, mindsets, myth-busting, and mentoring, all as they pertain to health and nutrition. This podcast is brought to you by Case-Specific Meal Prep, our very own in-house meal prep and delivery service. Check out our delicious chef-inspired and dietitian-approved meals at csmpgh.com. If you place your order by Thursday at noon, we will deliver your meals to you on Sunday, contactless and ready for your week ahead. Before we dig into today's podcast episode, make sure you like and share this video. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel so you can stay in touch with all things case-specific nutrition. Today's topic, we are going to be digging into a mindset. And this mindset is a very, very important one that I've actually personally integrated into my life over these last couple of years. And it's sort of a framework that I want you to spend a little bit of time today trying to look at your current habits. So again, it's a mindset for habit use and habit development. And I like to call it opportunities versus expectations. So there's some observations here. Expectations is a really interesting area of research. And if you want to learn more about how you respond to expectations, check out Gretchen Rubin. She has 2 books. One's called The 4 Core Tendencies, and the other is called Better Than Before. And it's an observation of, based on your personality type or a trait that you possess, how you respond to expectations, both expectations that are external, so what people expect of you, and expectations that are internal, what you expect of yourself. And what's interesting about expectations is regardless of your general traits or characteristics, one of the things that can happen is expectations can trigger the rebellious cycle, right? So say, for example, we expect ourselves to take a certain amount of steps per day, or we expect ourselves to exercise a certain amount of times per week, or we expect ourselves to eat a certain amount of calories per day. That expectation initially can be okay, but over time can start to become something that we resist. We start to get frustrated by it. And it can lead to that resistance, which then leads to rebelliousness, which then leads to sort of this regret, essentially, right? And so we fall into this category where we do what's called the shame cycle, which is we resist the habit, we then resent the habit, we then rebel from the habit, and then once we rebel from it, we regret our rebellion. And then that regret leads to furthered resentment. And it becomes this cycle where we just resent, rebel, regret, resent, rebel, regret. And so something to keep in mind is if you've ever been somebody that is tracking your calories and has a day where you don't track and you feel guilty, right? That guilt can oftentimes be that cycle of like you took a break or you didn't do it, so you basically did not stand up to your expectations, right? That leads to you feeling like, I'm frustrated, why should I have to do this, right? And so when you hear people talk about falling off the wagon or taking a break from the gym or not paying attention to their eating, all of these things sound like and are often connected to having expectations that have led to some sort of resistance or resentment that has then come to some sort of rebelliousness or opposition towards it, and then has led to that guilt-shame cycle that perpetuates and perpetuates. So let's stop there for a second. We're talking about habits, like health habits, health being your personal well-being. So we're talking about the things that are meant to be there for you, that are meant to support you, that are meant to serve you. And now we're talking about getting to a point with those habits that you resent them like they're the opposition. Can you see the problem there and why expectations can oftentimes backfire in grandiose formats? So something we want to look at is what's the alternative, right? If expectations for myself are going to inevitably lead to me to think that paying attention to my eating or paying attention to my movement is a source of frustration instead of a source of support, what's the alternative? And that is where we use the perspective of opportunities instead of expectations, right? So instead of expecting ourselves to move, having the framework that each day we have an opportunity to move, right? That's the difference between looking at your lunchtime workout as an obligation that you have to check off your list versus an opportunity to get away from your desk and escape from the stress for the day, right? Expectation, opportunity. One feels stressful and ends up kind of draining us over time. The other one feels very relieving and ends up spiking dopamine, making us feel good, making us feel accomplished. And so looking at things like an opportunity can be extremely powerful. Food, it's the same concept, right? There's a big difference between prepping your food on a Sunday and feeling like that is a required expectation, and as a result, feeling really frustrated and not wanting to do it, versus realizing that when you get to sit down for lunch on a Tuesday and you already have the food ready and it's there for you and it tastes good and it serves as this stress-relieving interruption in your day, that's an opportunity to nourish yourself. And so it all goes back to how we perceive it. Are we going to look at these choices that we're making as things that we have to do or things that we get to do, right? And so it's the I have to versus I get to mindset. That get to becomes so valuable because at the end of the day, you are the one choosing to do these things, and you're also choosing to do them because you think they're going to benefit you in some way. And so when we're talking about things that are only meant to be positive, our priority has to be to keep them positive. I like to step away from food and habits, and a couple weeks ago we talked about an analogy of the road trip. And I like to go back to the road trip for this opportunity versus expectations a little bit because I think it paints a good picture. A lot of times when I work with clients, they want to set these expectations of X number of steps a day or X number of exercises per week, X amount of calories, all of these things that become sort of expectations. And the thought behind that is it creates control and as a result creates predictability. If I do these things, if I put these inputs in, this is what's going to happen. I can control this. And that is also oftentimes that can be looked at as sort of a type of efficiency. Right? And in the road trip, it's kind of like if you were trying to drive cross country, looking at the most efficient route, point A, point B, what is the most direct path to get there? What is the most predictable way to get there? Versus looking at these things as opportunities where they're not forced obligations, but are instead things that you get to do each day. You're going to leave room for a little bit of unpredictability, right? A little bit of novelty. You're going to give yourself an opportunity to change up the style of exercise or adapt the eating a little bit. There's going to be some flexibility. And while that may reduce the efficiency, it does not necessarily reduce the effectiveness. And by that I mean, that would be the equivalent of on a road trip, instead of taking the fastest route, taking the scenic route. And so you're going across country, and instead of just doing the straight shot with the least amount of driving, you choose to stop in some cities along the way. And while it might take you a little bit longer to get there, you're going to have a much, much better story of how you got there. And more importantly, you're going to be more content and happier when you arrive. And so something we want to think about is when we look at opportunities, it may reduce predictability, and as a result, it might become less efficient. But let's step back again and realize that the point of healthy lifestyle, of being healthier, right, is not efficiency. It's the effectiveness, and it's the value that comes from all of the above. And so just like in our road trip analogy from a couple weeks back, right, the point of the journey, right, is not just the destination, it is actually the journey itself. The same can be thought of here. You moving and changing your eating to get X pounds lost, for example, focuses on inputs that create a predictable outcome, but you don't actually stop to enjoy the process along the way. And so once you get there, you don't have a great story of that journey, which means you're not going to value your arrival quite as much as if we actually take the time to look at each choice we make as a positive opportunity of self, let those accumulate, get lost in the journey, enjoy that process, and then arrive at that destination after taking that scenic route, getting there and being really proud of what you've accomplished along the way. So there you have it. Opportunities versus expectations. A little bit of a mental hack for you as we look at how our habits are perceived by us. And what ends up happening is if they're opportunities, you'll notice that they're a positive for you. They're going to be a source of stress reduction for you throughout the day. They're going to be the things that you get to look for. They're going to feel like self-care. If they're expectations, they probably feel like chores and to-dos. And once again, let's step back and ask ourselves an important question. Are we really trying to obligate ourselves to be healthier, or genuinely feel healthier as a byproduct of positive decisions that we feel good about? There you have it. mindset for the week, I challenge and encourage you to take a little bit of time, look at your life and your health habits, your self-care routines, and ask yourself, are you perceiving these as opportunities, or are you falling into that category of expectations? And if you're falling into the expectation, maybe take a step back and look at what's exciting about these things. What about these are you excited that you get to do? Let's try and reframe these as opportunities, maybe add a little bit of flexibility to them in terms of what the obligation for them is, and get to the point where the habits are actually on your side and supporting you the right way. As always, thank you for tuning in. Please make sure you like and share this video. Be sure to tag a friend or loved one and hashtag spread the health so you can help us pass on the positive mindsets to more people on their journey. We will be back next week with more CSN 3M content.